Good morning, class. My name is John Ozier. Today is Thursday, August 13, 2015, and this is the System of Counseling 1 class where Professor Russell Hobbs is the instructor. This is week 6, and this is my professional counselor presentation where I conduct an informal interview with a professional counselor and share the results of the interview with you via video. Elder Jim, an associate pastor at our church who has practiced biblical counseling there for 9 years, is the individual I selected to be a local counselor to interview for this project. I informed Elder Jim that I represented Lancaster Bible College as a student in a Systems of Counseling class, and I have the inspiration to become a biblical counselor. With this, Elder Jim received me with a smile of delight and a reception of warmness that remained throughout the interview, because he knows my success will eventually be a valuable asset to the church. Therefore, his eagerness to share what he had also showed throughout the interview. I informed him also that the responses would be shared through me with other students as well as my professor and instructor of the class via video. The following are the responses to questions Elder Jim agreed to share with me as well as with you. Elder Jim informed me that ever since he has been saved, that he wanted in some way to be a blessing to others as someone had been a blessing to him by leading him back to Christ. It was during this time he was training to be a minister that he was inspired and led to become a biblical counselor. The instructor who trained him was brought in from the outside of the church to train some would-be ministers. This instructor told the class of his credentials, and that he was a certified Christian counselor with a PhD in pastoral counseling. It was after this session of training that Elder Jim asked the instructor about how to get into biblical counseling, because his desire since being saved was helping others with problems, struggles, or issues in their lives as someone had did with him. Elder Jim said he felt in his heart that this was what God wanted him to do after the instructor explained step by step of what he needed to do. Elder Jim stated that he originally thought being in the ministry would fulfill his desire to help others, but believes that God led him to the instructor through the ministry training, and now all he had to do was be obedient to the call. Elder Jim had some credit hours at a local community college, transferred to the St. Louis Christian College, where he studied Christian ministry and night classes, and soon had his associate's degree, and later a bachelor's degree in Christian counseling. As of now, Elder Jim has a Master's of Divinity degree in Christian counseling and is a certified member of the American Association of Christian Counselors. Elder Jim is 53 years old and has been a member of the Believers Temple Word Fellowship in Ferguson, Missouri since 1997. He rededicated his life to Christ in 1995 at the Hopewell Baptist Church in St. Louis, Missouri, after falling away from Christ in his teen years when he was introduced to alcohol and drugs. He believes now that Jesus Christ was and is the only way to salvation, and now also does substance abuse counseling, where he emphasizes how Jesus is the only cure for substance abuse, and not a step program he had been with previously, which also failed him. Elder Jim was counseled by a substance abuse counselor whom he believed had great faith, was always using scripture for support when counseling. He was the inspiration he needed to be a substance abuse counselor, and is how he came to integrate theology into his biblical counseling. What Scripture has to say about every situation was the main factor that Elder Jim decided to integrate theology into his counseling. He states that after 9 years of counseling, there has not been an issue that he has been confronted with that he has not been able to relate to Scripture. Another factor in his decision into tying theology with counseling was his victory over substance abuse. He states that if not for his faith and belief in Jesus, he would not be among the living today, and believes he is to use counseling as a platform to show how God worked in his life and can work in the lives of the individuals he may be counseling. Describing how he generally treated issues such as anxiety and depression did not appear to be a challenge question for Elder Jim, but he was very thorough in his reply. He stated that he normally started by asking the individual to describe their experience of depression in vivid detail, because people are different, so depression comes in many shapes and sizes. Then he would try to identify the causes. He then described that this depression many times is not just something we have, it is something we do. He says he invites the individual to examine their own hearts with these questions. If your depression could speak, what would it say? What does it say about you, to others, to God? He states that depression is an active experience and can result from many sources other than that of the physical, such as guilt due to unconfessed sin, false guilt, misplaced shame, ungodly fears, suppressed bitterness or hatred, hopeless grieving, and unbiblical expectations. He then said he would advise Scripture and explain to the individual that the road out of depression is often by faith for the first few weeks. And then he explained to me that depressed people who come to Christian leaders for help first must accept the challenge of faithful obedience, even though they do not feel like it and are skeptical that anything will make a difference. He said also he would explain to them that progress out of the pit of depression is a step-by-step process, and that small, practical, consistent faith-based change often occurs in the details. When I asked him who in the Christian counseling field has impacted him the most, he surprisingly countered with our pastor and bishop, for he still leans on him for advice when doing counseling. I would have thought that he would have said his substance abuse counselor, but he states that the bishop has had more influence because of the longer relationship he had with him, and that it is on a more personal level than it was with his former substance abuse counselor. Although he has attended several American Association of Christian Counselors conferences in the past in Nashville, Elder Jim states that he does not attend many conferences now, as it is his duty to be responsible for the church when the bishop, who attends many conferences, is not present. He also stated he has already made his reservation for a conference that he intends to attend, and he attends yearly, called the MegaFest Conference, later this month in Dallas. This is a series of conferences that includes a variety of training, but not biblical counseling. Elder Jim has other attributes that will definitely help me in my biblical counseling journey that time did not permit me to interview him on, but stated he is willing to share with me as much as I feel I need to know and assist me with any forthcoming issues I may have in my journey to become a biblical counselor. Thank you, class, for your time and Professor Hobbs, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. And may you all have a blessed rest of the day and week. And thank you all again.